during one of those lockdowns, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I'm going to plant a vineyard. Like, do you want to come give me a hand?" And I was like, "I would love to get out of the house. Yes, thank you." And it was just like the literal breath of fresh air that I didn't realize I needed, because it was just working outside and with plants and getting dirty, getting muddy, and working with my hands. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Is this what people do in vineyards? So around that point, I applied for the Diploma of Viticulture at TAFE, New South Wales, um, and which was a 2-year course. And during that 2-year period, I landed a role at Mount Pleasant in the Hunter Valley, which was half cellar door and half vineyard, which was kind of a perfect role for me. It was an absolute dream. And I was really lucky to get that, because I had no experience in viticulture at all besides the diploma I was working on. And I got to work with that team with some of the oldest wine vineyards in the Hunter Valley, and really get to learn a lot of hands-on stuff, and learn that this is what I really wanted to do. And it kind of was like this clicking point for me, which was like, I was getting a bit over hospitality, but I was still in it. And there were still parts of it I loved. And it was like, oh, it's the wine that I like more than, for example, the guest service aspect of it and the late nights and the big hours and all that kind of stuff, which you still do in vineyards anyways. But from that point on, I really decided to kind of push my career towards like going full-time vineyard work. So I did another full year at Tyrrell's in just the vineyard on the hand crew, which was really great. And then I decided to try the winery side, because I said, well, if I've done 2, I might as well do 3 and just kind of do the whole wheelhouse. So I did 3 vintages in the winery, 2 in Canada, and then 1 in Australia, with my last one being a Canadian vintage in Ontario in 2024. And around that time, while I was in vintage, I started interviewing for the job I'm currently in now, which was actually following my boss from where I used to work at Mount Pleasant, to the other side of the country in Western Australia. So he went to take the vineyard manager role, and he said, hey, you should come out here. I was like, if you think I want to move into the middle of nowhere, you're nuts. Like, there is nothing around here. There is not even a grocery store in 60 kilometers from here. It is rural. But it was, and he's like, no, you really should. It's going to be great for your career. And I moved out here, and it was just this unbelievable change that I never realized was the best thing I ever could have done. So where I'm working is Swinney Vineyards in Western Australia. It is the largest vineyard in the state. We have 250 hectares under vine. And we sell to 40 different clients, which is the real tricky bit, because you don't often get vineyards that big that are not just cash crop. You could get really large vineyards and they'll be to 1 contractor to 2 contracts, or they'll be to their own contract, like places that a lot of people are more familiar with. But it's a very, very different beast, because we will have 1 block of Shiraz that is less than a hectare in size, and it will be sold to 4 different clients. And so you really have to not only negotiate different contracts, different pricing. There's so much that changes on a night. If you estimate that we're going to get, 8 tons to the hectare off the block, and you realize as you're harvesting your first 2 tons that your estimates are way off, that means you have to pivot and change in the middle of your harvest, in the middle of the night, and figure out, oh no, we actually have to stop harvesting now, because otherwise we're not going to get we're not going to meet the rest of those contracts within that same block. And I think for a long time, I really didn't really consider the skills I learned in hospitality to be as important and as invaluable as they were. But there's been so many times this past vintage, because I started 3 weeks before we first picked. So I was learning clients at the same time as I was learning blocks, as I was learning clones and learning staff and all that stuff. It was a very intense period to start the job in. But there are so many skills that I learned in hospitality that I think is the reason why I succeeded the way I did. And I've been getting really good feedback. And it's because of the customer service skills you learn, and the ability to think on your feet, and the perseverance in big nights and long hours, and having to make things up as you go half the time because you have to change things last minute. And all those skills are stuff that I learned in hospitality that has really, really helped me to succeed in the role that I'm in right now. And I think it's something that people who are in hospitality who may want to get out of it for the same sort of reasons I do, just be aware that what you're doing might feel like you're running into a brick wall sometimes, but these skills that you're learning are invaluable, and they're stuff that really translates across in this industry, even in places where you wouldn't expect it, which is like harvesting grapes in the middle of the night with a machine harvester without talking to a lot of people.
Now, Kayla, that was like super interesting, and I loved hearing those stories. I just wanted to go back a little bit to your time at Mount Pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there was a role there that was cellar door and vineyard, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't really see that being advertised on Seek or something like that. Did you have to go in and kind of advocate for yourself and say, hey, this is me, this is what I want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
can you make that happen? How did that kind of come about?
So that was it was a little bit of a unique situation because Mount Pleasant was undergoing a massive rebranding process. And at that time, they were kind of trying to revitalize the brand and all that. And I happened to be working with someone at the current Celador I was at who knew someone at Mount Pleasant and was like, "Oh yeah, I heard that they're hiring Celador staff, and they have big vineyards and all that sort of jazz." And so I went for the interview, and I was like, "Hey, listen, I'm great in hospitality. I know I'm great in hospitality, but I'm doing this diploma in viticulture. I'm really passionate about learning viticulture, and I would love to be able to work in the vineyard occasionally to supplement my education in a cellar door, because I think it's really invaluable when you're pouring wine to know where the wine comes from, to know how the wine is made. So you're not lying through your teeth sometimes. If someone, because I always think of it as you get customers like yourself, and I am one of those customers when you're pouring wine, and I can be like, "Oh, so what percent of cane prune versus spur prune vines was this batch made out of?" And people just look at me like, "Why are you asking me that?" But it was really cool to be able to answer those questions in the cellar door because of the time I had in the vineyard. And I was lucky they saw it as an advantage as well. They wanted to insert a little bit more youth into their vineyard team. And the goal was going to be that the longer I worked there, the more I would gain vineyard time and less cellar door time, kind of wean myself off the cellar door and into a full-time vineyard role. And so I think it was just really going to that interview, being confident and be like, I'm exactly what you need, but you have to do something for me. I think especially when you're in hospitality, it is an industry that is so suffering post COVID. You will never have an easier time finding a hospitality job than you will now, because so many people have left it. The industry has changed a lot. The way people are doing the industry has changed a lot. And so now is your time to really be in your own power and know that if you have the skills, to showcase those skills and to really say, I need to see the benefits of working for your company, because there's always going to be money. Like, you're always going to be able to work in hospitality and get fine dining and get tips and all that kind of stuff. But if you want to grow your career, you have to look at the kind of role where you can have a hybridization, whether it's cellar door 3 days a week and sales 2 days a week, or cellar door 3 days a week and vineyard 2 days a week. Those hybrid roles do exist, but you really have to be assertive when you go for them and ask for what you want.
Now, actually, that's really interesting because obviously we're talking about, the hospitality industry, and like Sunday rates are pretty darn good, and add some tips into that. Is there a major pay disparity between, hospitality and vineyard work?
I think if you're on a casual basis, it's you are, because the thing is with vineyards, we do not work on the weekends unless it's vintage. But it's kind of that transition that you always kind of hope for in the back of your mind is like, you know what, I would love to not have to take annual leave every single time I want a weekend off in hospitality. I would love to be able to just work Monday to Friday. And it's one of those things where you can do it. And then when you get into there's the two peak periods of the year. So you have harvest and you have pruning. And both of those times are usually pretty good times where you can work lots of hours, even if you're not only like if you're a casual contractor, you're working for a contracting company. I know like in the Hunter, there's a couple contracting companies where they'll take you around to multiple different companies and you're prune. And companies like that, they'll let you work as many days as you want because they know that they have the clients to fill that role. In terms, I think it's definitely a lifestyle change. That for me, the pay was secondary in that sense because it wasn't a huge difference, but it was, not having to beg to get a weekend off, being able to know that I have a set end time. Okay, it's quiet season right now. My end time is 3:30. That means I'm walking at the door at 3:30. It's not, oh, our last table's coming in at 3:20, and then we're going to serve that table for 3 hours, and then we're going to clean up, and then we're going to leave. There's no night shifts except for vintage. I get a break every single day, which just doesn't happen in hospitality. Like I was working some insane shifts this harvest, and everyone's like, I don't understand how you have energy when you have been working for 15 hours. And I'm like, what do you mean? I got 2 breaks today. This is the best. And it was just like, it's one of those things where hospital is a hard industry and you make good money because it's a hard industry. And one of those things that you sacrifice might be the money, but you might have an easier, a more relaxing lifestyle where you have those benefits to kind of balance it out.
It's actually really interesting to hear you say that because we were talking about a survey that actually led to this webinar. My connection's unstable, unfortunately. So hopefully it keeps going. About young people wanting to like change and upskill and give personal and professional development. And on there we asked like, what are the most important things to you? And it was about being seen in your workplace. It was about having those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And pay was there, but it wasn't that high. It was midway between
Yeah.
those things. So our generation is pay, yes, is important, but feeling fulfilled and having our values align, which you spoke about, is much more important in our day-to-day roles. And that's what we want to see out of our employers. For the attendees in the room, I actually forgot to mention this, but if you do have any questions for the team, because I know there's some video guys in here at the moment, just pop them in the chat box and I'll be able to ask the team. And Kayla, just one final question. If you don't mind sharing, how old are you?
I am 29. I've been in this industry, in the wine industry in Australia for 6 years. 6 years?
Okay.
7 years. Yeah.
Relatively new, I think, and to have that courage of conviction and know exactly what you want, and then to chase those dreams and move to WA, where your closest supermarket is 60 kilometers away, is quite big.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
happy? Like, are you thriving?
Yeah, I absolutely adore it. I think with when you're looking at sidestepping, I think the kind of a lot of people, the dream is like, oh, I want to go into winemaking. But the reality is with winemaking, you can get a cellar position, which is 3 months out of the year, and then it's impossible to find work the rest of the year. The entire wine industry, we're seeing lack of AW positions, we're seeing lack of full-time cellar hands because the industry is just really strapped for space right now. Where always needs staff is vineyard. I am not kidding. Like the pay, if you are talking about pay, if you tractor operators, really good pay because that generation, most of our operators are in that older generation. And then the rest of our staff is backpackers that are temporaries. So if you do want to consider vineyards, I would definitely say go for those rural positions because you can jump up on that ladder a little bit quicker because people are willing to take people that are passionate and want to stick around for the job, rather than experience but don't really care about the job. What we're seeing with the younger people entering this industry, especially in the vineyard industry, is that we don't have a lot of them doing it because the winery is always the dream, and B, it's just not we don't get people as passionate entering into the vineyard as we do into the winery. Like you get lots of people in the vineyard that don't necessarily drink wine, but you never see that in the winery side. So I think that if you really are passionate about this industry, the vineyard will always be happy to have you. It can be a little bit hard sometimes to break into it, especially if you're going into it really green. But all it takes is, a little bit of perseverance, finding someone that's willing to train you, volunteering on the weekends to maybe learn how to drive a tractor or something. That's something I really struggled with when I entered the industry, is that no one wanted to hire me because I didn't have tractor experience, which is ridiculous because it does not take that long to learn how to drive a tractor. But just believe in yourself, and which sounds corny as all hell, but you just have to ask for it sometimes, and just say, you know what, no, I deserve this, I want this, and I'm going to ask for it until they are too annoyed at me to say no.
Now, Kayla, Brent's just asked a question. Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel like the vineyard is your final step within the industry?
I think I do in Australia for sure. I absolutely adore the vineyards in Australia, and I love the vineyard industry. The only reason I can see that changing is if I did choose to go back to Canada, because the vineyard industry is pretty different there in terms of we don't have resources like the AWRI there. This snow is very impactful. Obviously, what's going on in the States right now is hindering the agricultural workers available, because the entire vineyard industry relies on South American agricultural workers that come in for 8-month visas. So if I did end up going back there and it just got really, really difficult, or it was just super, super different from the Australian industry, maybe I would look at shifting into another role. But I honestly cannot. Like I love this side of the industry. I love what I'm doing right now. I've never been happier in a job. Um, Regardless of the fact that a grocery store is so far away, it is well worth it for me, and it is definitely my final stop in the Australian industry as long as I'm in this country.
That is amazing to hear. Kayla, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your insights. It's been really fascinating to hear. Louis, let's chat to you next. Now, you are a winemaker and have your own wine brand now, but that's not how your journey in the wine industry started. Do you want to take us through that?
Um, yeah, so we now have our own family business, Worlds Apart Wines in the Adelaide Hills, and it is a real family business. We have me and my wife, and that's it. So no employees, and it's just a little team. We do everything. We don't grow grapes, and we don't bottle wine, but we sell it all, we ferment it all, we blend it all, age it all, do all the marketing, sales, accounting, everything else ourselves. So and we love that. It keeps it interesting. But yeah, I got into wine. I worked in music and in the music industry, and before that, I studied engineering and briefly worked in an engineering job. I moved back home to Adelaide in 2010 and got a job at East End Cellars, which is like kind of the best wine shop in Adelaide. And I worked there for 6 years. When I started there, I didn't really know anything about wine. I started as a delivery driver, box packer, ship kicker, and at Christmas time, and after a couple of months there, was offered a full-time job and kind of had my first glass of white burgundy and got bitten by the bug. And it's been kind of wine ever since. So I worked there for 6 years. I worked my first harvest in 2016 at Dakota Barrels in the Adelaide Hills, where I ended up staying for 10 years. And after harvest, I got a job as a sommelier in a restaurant in Adelaide called Arana. It was really fancy, high end. It was the best restaurant in Australia at the time. So I was pretty lucky with that. And then I worked there for a while, did another harvest at Dakota Barrels. I did a harvest in Arizona in the US in that year as well. And then I worked as a wine rep for a little while, part time. We started our own, I started Worlds Apart in 2017, actually, making 2 barrels of red and 2 barrels of white and selling a few cases to friends and family and people that I knew who had wine bars and restaurants in Adelaide. Um, and yeah, then I worked a couple of other jobs in sort of in wine, and then we opened a wine bar in Adelaide with a friend of mine. So we took on a little space in a basement on Rundle Street and opened our kind of dream wine bar in February 2018. I got out of that at the beginning of last year, so did that for sort of 5 years as well as working at Dakota Barrels, and obviously, that's where I learned to make wine from Taras Dakota there, and then he died in 2020, and I kind of kept making the wine there for Amber, who was running the whole business and running everything, and I was just kind of helping make the wine for her. So that was like a big learning curve, and then yeah, kind of as of this year, we've got out of everything except Worlds Apart. So that's been a really nice kind of progression, and to have that, I guess at some point along the way, I kind of went from being I'll never make wine because there's enough, somms turned winemakers making garbage wine without me doing it as well. So starting off from that and then being, actually this is kind of the best life and the best lifestyle and the way that we want to kind of try and make a living as a family. And it's now our only thing. And we're about to make a big investment building a big kind of off-grid winery out the back of our house here in the Adelaide Hills. And so yeah, we're committing to it. We're now making sort of 3,500 cases and exporting to half a dozen countries, and it's been good. Yeah.
That's incredible. And we met Louis' girls just before. So he's also raising a young family as well, which like is a challenge enough to put all those extra hats on and off, over your career. I wanted just to go back a little bit and we'll talk about harvest because obviously, you were doing a bunch of different things and then you thought, I want to get involved with harvest. And that sometimes aligns with, time periods of the restaurant where you can't take that off and traveling overseas. So it's like, it's a massive investment. Was that all self-funded? Did you just decide that this is something that I really want to do, so I'm going to save up for it? Or did you chase like scholarships and opportunities? How did you get to do those things?
um Credit card debt. No, I was sort of back then. I was in a pretty wobbly time in my life before my wife Hannah came along and kind of fixed me. So I was pretty like fast and loose and free and easy. And yeah, I'd kind of left retail, and Taras rang me. He was a mate already, and said, "I need someone to help for harvest." And I'd always kind of, actually, since I first started in retail, I thought it was only ever going to be a Christmas casual job, and I was supposed to go and do harvest with Steve Pannell in February 2011 or whatever. But then the job at East End turned full time, and actually like never ended up doing it. And so it was kind of a dream. And obviously, like I had, huge affinity for the Dakota Barrels wines and all of that. And then, yeah, I was kind of working in a restaurant. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and the offer to go to Arizona came through. So that was from Maynard from Tool. So he's got the winery and vineyards and stuff in Arizona, and he's got plenty of coin, and he can't have American seller hands because of all the Tool super fans who want to try and slice him into ribbons and stuff. So he reached out to Taras and said, "Can you recommend someone and he kind of like flew me over and put me up and everything like that, and I hung out there for a few months, and that was great. So yeah, and I've kind of the one thing I would have loved to do is more overseas harvests and stuff like that. But yeah, life has gotten in the way of that. And trying to grow a small business through. Hang on, the kids are banging. I'm in the junk room at the end of the house to try and escape the kids, but they're going nuts.
Fine, bring them
But
in.
yeah,
Like,
I sort of
I think as parents, we like, because I'm a parent myself, we always hide our kids, right? We're professional. This is what we've got to, be a part of. Like, we've got to just, make it all work. And sometimes it does come undone. And I think we do a disservice to people that aren't yet parents to show you that, like, yeah, it's chaotic. And yeah, sometimes it's just like, how am I going to get through this? But like, it's actually all okay. Sometimes the emails can wait. Sometimes you can join in on the Zoom. Like, this is all okay because our kids are a part of our life and being a parent is a part of our life. So let's not hide this fact. Let's talk about this when we go to our job interviews and say, hey, what's your maternity leave policy? Let's talk about it when we want to, go to Mother's Day lunch that's coming, a Mother's Day breakfast that's coming up at school. Let's like talk to our employers about this because it's actually really important, and we have to actually pave the way for other people that need that opportunity as well. I actually just wanted to ask you, and I think this is a really good leading question. What's your favorite part about being a business owner?
yeah, it's exactly that. It's the flexibility and the ability to kind of find our own balance, I guess. Well, attempt at it, but through like, I mean, Akota Barrels is a tiny, very family oriented business as well, and through 10 years of being the kind of only employee there, um, and driving around with those kids on my lap, driving the forklift around with those kids on my lap, and having them be there in the winery with us all the time, and all having lunch together in the kitchen every day with all of our kids and their kids. That's what kind of that I was like, well, this is why we have to build a winery at our own house, like out the back of our back door, because I don't. On the one hand, you're like, I'm always on my phone, like I'm always like doing invoices and replying to emails and blah blah blah, and then but on the other hand, like I don't have to like get in the car and leave for 10 hours a day and be MIA, and be exhausted at the end of the day. I'm actually kind of, around. So it is like, and I think like what you say, the questions about maternity leave and things like that are so important, because I think that the times of like, the man being at work and the woman being at home running the family are so far behind us now. It's everybody kind of has to do everything, and it's more fun and it's more exciting, it's more interesting, it's more challenging, more exhausting maybe a lot of the time for both mum and dad, but it's great, it's really nice. And to be a family business is just, it means that means a lot to us. So yeah.
I just also had one last question before we throw it open to the floor if anyone else has any questions. You have named some quite big people that have given you opportunities. Do you think that's come as a result of networking and keeping your network really strong, or do you think it's something else?
um I think like words like networking are a bit too formal in my world. I think if you're a good person, and people will, I get, as a former employer with a hospitality business, you get people calling up like, is he a good is he a good person, is she a good worker, is she going to steal from me, whatever. And like, that's, those references are really, I think it's just be a good person and be fun to hang out with. People are going to want to hang out with you and give you a job, and like, like you say, even the bigger organizations in our industry are still very much very relationship based, right? Like, you only have to do a bit of wine judging interstate or a few regional wine shows and stuff like that, and it's people from all over the country. You see the same faces, and a lot of that kind of stuff. So I guess, yeah, like informal networking, I suppose. Um, but yeah, and just like-minded people. I think I have been really lucky. Like, Michael Andrew Arthur and Margie Andrew Arthur at East End Cellars were amazing mentors, and then Joxon Frillo at Arana was amazing, and I've had these really kind of powerful Tarasakota, like these amazing, like really really kind of um, big personalities who have been around, and yeah, like I don't know why, but I've been really lucky to have those mentors throughout my time in wine. So yeah, I don't know why.
Now that's awesome. And I guess like root links didn't really exist, you know, before. So now we could potentially provide that opportunity for other young people in the industry that didn't have that. And now I'm going to ask you as well, Louis, how old are you?
Yeah, I'm not a rootling. I'm 41.
But like that's really like on the cusp. Like you don't have to be super young. It's about seeing,
Yeah.
all of these amazing success stories in people that are not much older than us, realistically, and the paths to get there. And if you were 29, I'd probably doubt half your stories anyway, because it's quite a journey you've been on. I'd probably be pulling up the
Yeah,
LinkedIn
this is
of the
really
next
like my
guy.
this is my third career.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's my third career, and I didn't. Yeah, I started in wine at the as a casual bottle shop attendant at 27. That was my first job in wine. So I love, like, hearing Kayla, like, to be a woman in your 20s in a really professional role in the Australian wine industry is just like, that's rock and roll. Like, that's what we need more of, I think. That's why this industry is so exciting now, because there is so much of that happening.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so many amazing young people out there. Oh, we've got Brent, a question from Brent before we move on to chat to Caitlin. You mentioned a sea of Soms making shit wine. Did you have a large amount of pushback when you first started? And if yes, did it get to you? It's a large question, but how do you manage to build a strong brand with a flood of wine on the shelves? Great question.
Yeah, I think probably back in 2017, it was a little bit easier than trying to break through now, I would think. Um, there wasn't so many brands, and people were maybe less cynical, and sort of, natural wine was really exciting. And to have someone I came in without any technical experience or knowledge at all, and probably I should have had more pushback, because when I taste my old wines, they're like the embarrassing first record. But I got some good constructive criticism, and I got a lot of people supporting me in there, by buying our wine, and I think the wines have evolved a lot, and have gotten more technically correct over the years, and I think, especially in the last 2 years, we've found that people are a lot more. It's really competitive, and people are a lot more critical with wobbly things in wine, which we have to make a lot more technically more high quality wines than we used to, and that's been an important part of our journey, while still trying to make sure that the wines have, great personality and excitement, and are interesting and taste like the place and the variety. We have to do kind of all this stuff now, whereas I think maybe, up until 2021, 2022, you could kind of get away with murder a lot with a lot of wine in our kind of segment, I guess. Yeah.
I guess it's that persistency, right? And like you have to you have to want it and you have to want to make a change. And like your first draft or your first wine or the first thing you produce is not going to be the best thing that you produce. Let's be honest, it's not. But you've started, right? And that's kudos enough because you grow and you grow and you continue to develop. I look back at some of the flyers that I first made and I'm like, my God, they are dog shit, right? And like, but you
Yeah.
had to start somewhere to constantly refine yourself. And like, maybe I'll look back now in, 5 years' time and be like, what? But I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you do have to start somewhere. Brent just asked
And
another question and we will get back to you, but I'm just conscious on time. So I'm just going to move over to Caitlin, unless Louis, you had something you really wanted to finish with.
I just like the difference between selling, anyone can sell 100 cases of wine, but to sell enough wine to feed a family of five, you got to be a little bit more professional about it.
And you've got
That's
to be
all.
hungry for it, right? Because at the end of the day, that is your family's livelihood.
Yeah,
There's no plan B. This is it.
yeah. You got to make good choices and work hard for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for that insight, and thank you for the guest appearance as well. Caitlin, let's hand over to you because you've had a really, really fascinating journey in the wine industry, and I can't wait to hear you delve into it.
So just start at the beginning and
Yes, let's start
work
at
our
the
way through.
beginning. Like,
Yep.
how did you fall into it? Do you have family in the industry, or did you just come along and taste Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc and was like, "Oh, this tastes kind of good. I want to keep."
You're not far off. We can. No, I studied health science as an undergraduate degree, and I found myself in Stellenbosch in South Africa, traveling after I'd finished that degree. And I think for anyone that's grown up in South Australia, or I don't know, maybe it was just my family and its sort of alcoholic tendencies, something that we used to do a lot on weekends was visit cellar doors, right? And I always found that really engaging, even as a kid. And I was at sort of a very early career crossroads where I didn't know whether I'd pursue something postgraduate or whether I'd sort of keep going down the health science path that I was on. And when I found myself in Cape Winelands, I thought, people must do this for a job, right? Like maybe similar to Kayla, like this seems really great. Maybe this is something I could do. And I came back to Adelaide and I started a Master's of Enology at Uni Adelaide. And after I wrapped that up, I worked a couple of harvests overseas and a few back here in Tassie and also in South Australia. And then probably after 5 or so years of production, like harvest on, harvest off, I thought it might be nice to have something a bit more stable and find a full-time role where maybe only 3 or 4 months of the year was hectic rather than all of it. Um, and the lab manager role at Shaw and Smith up here in the hills came up, and I was fortunate to land that role. And I worked vintage 2019 there, and I was there for about 12 months. And the longer that I spent in a full-time role that was very heavily production based, the more I realized that I was interested in learning more about business strategy and why we were actually doing all of this and who our customers were and what was informing the decisions that we made about varieties that we might have been planting or styles that we might have been making. And I left that role and I was really lucky. I got a sales and marketing role with Jericho Family Wines. So they've got vineyards they own a vineyard in McLaren Vale, but they buy fruit from Adelaide Hills in McLaren Vale. And that's quite a small family business. There's probably the whole family works in the business, but I'd say there's sort of at that time it included me 2 or 3 operational people kind of full time in that business. And because it's so small, I really was given a lot of introduction to how we forecast sales or how we put a budget together or what our sales strategy is for a particular SKU or new product development and things that I never would have been exposed to if I'd stayed in a business where I was pigeonholed, if you like, in production. And they were also very good to me in the sense that, and this is something that I would really encourage anyone to do if you're looking for free professional development, is join your wine region, join your regional body, like get on the executive committee or join a subcommittee, and you will learn so much and you will meet so many people, and that will that will propel your career in whatever direction you choose it to in a lot of ways. So I think because I was able to spend some time on some of those committees with Adelaide Hills, I felt confident in applying for the Wine Australia Future Leaders program, which I did in 2023. And that again was a big development and a big shift in my career progression. And I left Jericho after being in that sales marketing role for 3 years and spent 12 months with the Department of Primary Industries and Regions here in South Australia. So in a wine advisor role, so a role that would advise the government on kind of what was happening in the sector. And there's a lot of things happening in the wine sector at the moment, and they're not all good. So that was a really good opportunity for me to put together a lot of the networks and skills that I've developed over the last 10 years and hopefully provide some useful information into the government to help inform, any policies or support that they might have in place for our industry. And again, I've moved around a lot. I was only in that role for about 12 months, and this role that I'm in now at the AWRI came up, and it's a new role, and it operates in a new framework. So I think hopefully people listening are familiar with what the AWRI do, but they're a research provider for the wine industry, and what they do really well is research and extension adoption, but their funding model is primarily through Wine Australia, our RDC, and our RDC is our Regional Development Corporation. So this middle bit between research and extension is development, and that's what my role is. So I'm not in research. I'm in helping the researchers get their product into the hands of industry based on feedback that we get from industry.
And actually, I've come to learn there's obviously lots of acronyms, but like when you talk about
Yes.
extension, what
Yep.
does that look like in this pathway?
Sure. So I think if we look at how AWRI or any other research provider has traditionally disseminated information, you've got a researcher over here and they make this product or they write this paper or whatever. And then the way that gets out to industry can be through a manuscript, through a paper, through a workshop, through the AWRI helpline. So that's extension. And then the adoption is kind of the uptake of that by industry. So the development is really the thing that gets it from this early stage in a commercialization process where maybe we are really sure that we know that the research works, but what do we know about the market? Who wants it? How would they use it? How does it fit into their business? How expensive is it for them to buy? Do we have someone that can actually distribute the product? So it's those other things that surround the science that can translate into a product that someone in a wine business or someone in a vineyard can actually bring into their business day to day.
It is so fascinating to learn about all of these different processes and the different people behind them as well, because that's really important too. And when you first started out, your role now, did you ever think that would even be a role? Did that role even exist?
No, I don't think it did. And this is something that we are at AWRI in tandem with Wine Australia trying to make a really good go of, but it's actually not just us, it's all of the other, and sorry for the acronyms, but RDCs. So we have an RDC in the wine industry, it's Wine Australia, but all of the other primary industries also have this same body. So, dairy has it, livestock has one, cotton has one. So as more broadly speaking, that particular development piece is something that we are all trying to learn how to do better. So did the role exist sort of 10 or 12 years ago? I don't think so. So it's certainly an iteration day on day. And Jenny, you said you're having a good time learning about it. Like I'm learning about it every day as well. Like I turn up to work every day having to try to do something new or improve on a process that maybe isn't working as well as it could, or taking on feedback from external and internal people and trying to make things easier for the people that are doing the work and also create some positive outcomes for industry.
And actually, feedback can be really challenging to receive. And when you're in a role such as yours, like it's constant feedback, how do you not like take it personally because you work so closely to this product and this development and this research. Do you have any like hot tips that young people could also then use when they going to their boss for things or going for new jobs or whatever? Because it is really a big part of life and really big in your role.
Yeah, I think you will always receive feedback, but I think you put yourself in a position of power if you go and ask someone for it, right? So I do this at work a bit, and it still makes me uncomfortable. I don't necessarily love turning up to my boss's office and asking for feedback on how I'm doing, because there's every possibility that they might give me something that I don't really want to hear. But you do sort of take some of the power back if you ask for it instead of waiting for it to be delivered to you. And in terms of how you can try not to take that personally, I think that's just something that comes with time.
Yeah. And once you get more used to it as well, like it just becomes, yeah, like an opportunity to think differently or take another person's perspective on board. I actually really think it's fascinating, like how different the jumps have been in your role. Did you ever look at maybe the CCAD and think, oh, I don't really hit the criteria of what
Yes.
I need. I'm not going to apply. Like,
Yep.
talk to us about that.
When I shifted out of the Shaw and Smith role into the Jericho role, I saw it pop up and I thought, okay. And also likewise for the AWRI role. So I'll talk about them in the same breath, though the roles are different. What I have learned to do in those circumstances is look at what in the job ad is things that I can do versus not things that I can't do. And I actually, when I saw the Jericho ad, Andrew Jericho's number was on it, and I rang him and I said, "Hey, I've got these skills and I don't have these skills. Is it worth me putting in an application, or am I wasting both of our time?" And that's an easy thing that's an easy piece of initiative that you can take as a person who's maybe looking to fill a role, because I think that also demonstrates to potential employers that you have initiative and that you are possibly a value add to the company, even if you don't check every box. And I think as I've gone along in my career and I've had to interview people or look to hire people, when I'm writing a job ad, I'm making it up as I go along. Like, I don't know, right? So I'm putting in things that I think are like, some of them are non-negotiables and then some of them are nice to have. So it never hurts to ask the question if you think that you might be able to fill two-thirds of the role. You can always learn the other third.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's really awesome advice as well. And thank you for the opportunity to just like get into the head of that process and like such a diverse, amazing career you've had. I hope you paid off your HEX debt because there's nothing more devastating.
Not even close.
Oh, at tax time. Well, hopefully Albo comes through with the 20%
Come
reduction.
on, Albo. Yep.
Fingers crossed. And actually, just really quickly, Louis, before we move on to B, Brent actually asked about this in the question, but did you go back and study winemaking, or has it all been trial and error, learning on the job and connections in the industry?
No, I haven't studied winemaking. I have an engineering degree. But yeah, everything I know about. Well, I'm very lucky. I have a Peter Lesky in my corner that anyone from the especially AWRI, you guys should everybody should know who Peter Lesky is. And we have him as a kind of unofficial consultant winemaker for all things technical. And we also have, yeah, I mean, like the AWRI is like a massive, like I've used that help desk many times. We use Affinity Labs to do all of our testing. I think, yeah, the best thing you can kind of be is critical and humble about your wines, and just just understand that like once you bottle you that's it, you've wrapped it up. You got to make sure that it's good before it gets to there, and try and manage all of the little things that lead up to there, and when the inevitable batches go bad, it's what you do with them. And do they become a financial liability, or do they become a brand damaging liability? That's your choice, I guess. So yeah, no, I haven't, and I'm still learning, and it's great. And I think it's been an asset to not come from it from that angle, to come from it from the consumer angle back, I think has been a real kind of point of difference for our wines, because I think they're not the kind of wines that they teach you to make at uni. So yeah.
For sure. Now, B, let's move on to you, because you've had quite a whirlwind of the last couple of years. I mean, I've been lucky enough to know B, who worked here in the Hunter Valley, and then she undertook the wine industry mentorship program, got a great mentor, and now has ended up moving to Victoria. She's living in Melbourne. But let's hear from the gal herself about your wine journey.
Excellent. I should not have gone last, guys. Thank you so much. Stories are incredible. Basically, so my journey in the wine industry started working in retail, hated my job, was told again and again and again that I was really good at, quote unquote, food and wine. So I looked up wine education and I went for WSET level 2. And that was my first ever introduction into this community that we find ourselves in. Talking to people with equal fervor and enthusiasm over grapes was just mind-boggling. So WSET level 2 led to level 3, still working in retail, so it was just a bit of fun on the side. And then a friend of mine knew of a job opening part-time in the Hunter Valley, just working cellar door, and I thought, let's just go for it. Which led me from there. I then went full-time with the Scarborough Wine Company in the Hunter Valley, where actually, Kayla, I did a tasting for you. Hi. And through that, I got to meet some incredible people. I mean, I got to be in the same room as Liz Riley, which to this day makes me so excited. And I got to learn firsthand how important the entire journey from grape to glass is, and what that means for me when I'm talking to other people about it and telling the story. And I was lucky enough, Caitlin, I think you mentioned, talking to, being part of your local wine community, in that I joined Sommeliers Australia. I had the Wine New South Wales the newsletter, and through that came up this opportunity to try for the Wine Communicators mentor program, which is what started my real career in the wine industry. It kind of broadened my community again. I got Dr. Darren Elmackie of Hydra Consulting in Adelaide, who is an incredible man, and he encouraged me to do wine judging, wine stewarding. And it took me from feeling very much, there's a lot of isolation for myself in the Hunter, being quite regional, and wanting to maybe talk to a bit more of the sector. And that kind of took me from the Hunter Valley to, okay, how can I make this bigger? How do I make it more? So I looked at who was hiring and, who the big guys were in Sydney and Melbourne. Decided very quickly I couldn't afford Sydney. It is a horridly expensive place. And I applied for Joval, and they said, we love you, but you don't know anyone here. How about customer service? And I think that when we're looking at, we're talking about pay and, taking a pay hit, coming down, moving to a major city, finding an apartment, starting a new job, and, working at base rate customer service was like, is this what I want? And I just wanted a bigger bite of the Australian wine industry, so went for it. And now 10 months on, I'm developing their national corporate strategy, part of Joval School of Wine. They're an incredible workplace, but again, it comes down to growing that community, and that's being part of more than just my workplace. It's being part of Rootlings, which is an incredible opportunity to, talk to you lovely folk, but also, that buzzword, as Louis mentioned, networking. Maybe it's a bit of a big, scary word, but it's just, being friendly and having a conversation. So yeah, very enthused, very excited.
I forgot I was on mute. But I mean, because B actually was one of the first Rootlings in New South Wales before she moved on. Can you tell us, because obviously this is quite new to a lot of people, within the, you know, the industry, and it's quite a new concept. What did Rootlings give you, and what did being part of Rootlings kind of, it is obviously a bit of a self-plug, but I feel the same way. But like, what did Rootlings inspire in you?
I think it comes down to, and I do, I'm really big on buzzwords, and I say, you know, I say the fancy cuddly words lots, but that sense of community. I think Rootlings, having the opportunity to talk to like-minded people who are in your area, and I think, you know, being quite location bound, you know, when you're looking at wine regions, they're not in the middle of the city. You can't walk out the front door. Kayla, you can't just go to the supermarket. Like, you are bound by location. And Rootlings opened a bigger community in the Hunter than I had previously. And I've really loved, it's been perfect timing that it's gone national right when I've moved to Melbourne. Thank you, guys. But yeah, I think it's invaluable, the access to being able to talk to like-minded people. The Australian wine industry is incredibly small. Everyone knows each other by first names. It's mental. You know, I think, you know, this whole webinar sidestepping is exactly what the wine industry is about. No one has a clear path. You know, it's not like you don't become a surgeon by doing 4 years here, 2 years here, you know, specializing in doing this here. Everyone is just doing the best they can, moving sideways. So yeah, I think, yeah, if we're plugging Rootlings, hell yeah.
Well done. Obviously your trajectory with Joval has been quite fast. Did you go to your managers, or did you go to the bosses and say, I want more? Was that something that you had from the outcome? Is that something that you regularly chatted to them about? Or is it something that they already recognized in you?
I think it was a bit of both. I think we knew coming in, the agreement was 6 months in customer service, then we'll see how we go. But I hit the ground and I was like, I want more. I want as much as you can give me. You know, oh, you've started Joval School of Wine. I want to be national director. Like, how do we make this happen, kind of a thing? That's 20 years in the future. But it was being completely open from the outset, was like, I'm happy to do anything you guys want me to do. I'm hungry for it. I'm quite lucky in that I can give my time, like Louis mentioned, you know, the ability for you to carry your phone and be home and do whatever you need. I'm at a point where I can actually give my time and say, oh, you do want 10 hours. That's fine. I can give you 10 hours. How about we develop me a little further? How can I get more involved in this? Maybe not necessarily in the role that I'm currently in, but even on the outskirts. And that's what got me into Joval School of Wine. Was I just started doing their social media stuff. Really enthused by it. Everyone saw how enthused I was by it. And having the ability to have a conversation, that's all it is. It's just having a conversation.
For sure. And I think obviously you know, Joval has one of the most amazing portfolios in the country. Would you say that is one of the major perks?
Little bit. I do like my wine allowance. Cheers. Thank you, Joval. I think it's a huge perk to be able to speak to, for myself, I'm so intrigued by sustainability. And we're looking at, you know, how, you know, what's in the glass has touched 1,000 hands. How can we make it better? I get to talk to, you know, 1,000 different producers. I get to represent, you know, so many different wine producers who are so in love with their product because it has come through blood, sweat, and tears most of the time. And I get to tell other people about that. So having the ability to just share, I mean, it sounds so corny, share stories. Oh, I hate myself for saying that. But like, you just get to explain, you know, this is a Pinot from here. Why is it amazing? I've got 10 just like it, but this one in this moment, in this instant, is why you should drink it. It's so much fun.
Just truly fascinating. And it's been so amazing to see your journey as well, you know, being friends and seeing you, you know, keep going up. And I have no doubt you'll be a national director in no time, you know, for positions that don't exist. And like some of these positions, yeah, have existed previously, but some of these positions, like, we need to carve and create ourselves. Like, So, I think the lessons we've taken from here, from everyone, are very, very similar, right? Be really passionate about it, but also don't doubt yourself. Give it a red hot go. And yes, your first try might not be the right try, but just keep going. I think also that community is really, really important. And I think we can all speak to that. And that at the end of the day is, yeah, more important than the money that you take home. It's having those people around you, the people that you can look up to, and the people that you can lean upon in the good times and the bad times. Yeah, are some of the really key takeaways. I am very conscious that we've just run a little bit over time, but is there any questions from the audience that you'd like to finish with, or from you guys that have so generously given your time to us tonight? Is there anything that you kind of want to leave us with, or any last kind of thoughts? I feel like, Caitlin, you're about to say something really profound.
No, I was just preparing in case I accidentally left myself on mute and needed to speak.
And I mean, we've talked about this community and connection, and if you guys don't mind, if the people in the webinar don't mind, if you wouldn't mind if I could connect you guys, because I think, I know some of the guys are in the vineyard, sales, marketing, and winery and all of that, and can see themselves on potentially the same trajectory as you, and hopefully we can connect each other, even if it's not in like a formal mentorship, if it's just in a casual conversation. But I think it would be able to, create these new pathways for these awesome young people like yourselves, and in the meeting as well. So thank you all so much for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating to hear your stories. I also think it's really interesting that none of you came from wine families. It was all kind of like you stumbled into it and just fell in love with it, which I think is just so fascinating, because it's a story that we hear a lot as well. So thank you all so much for giving up your time on this Tuesday afternoon. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear all of your stories. Thank you to our audience as well, and Brent, for all your insightful questions. There are many of them, which is fantastic. Our next webinar, our next online education series that we're doing, which is actually perfect for after this webinar, is we've got a career coach, Kate Richardson. She's worked with some amazing companies all across Australia. She's going to talk about what are your personal values. So very much similar to like what all of these guys have been saying. What is your personality? What do you value most? It might be time with the family. It might be learning more. It might be the hunger and passion for sharing stories. What's the framework for that, and how do you create your own career path? So that is happening at the end of the month. So I think will be a really fascinating follow-up, and hopefully give everyone a guidance or a framework to move forward, and either stay in the career that you love now, or to sidestep into something that might not even exist yet. But thank you all so much for being with us, and through all your work, you're making the Australian wine industry such a brighter and better place. So the future looks really, really good. Awesome.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jenna.
guys, and I will see you all very soon. Bye.
Bye.